Welcome in to Warchant TV. I'm Jeff Cameron. Great to have you along. There you see the gentleman on board. That's Gene Williams. He is the owner. He is the founder and administrator of Warchant.com. That is Ira Schafel, the managing editor. Tom Lang, director of content. And I'm the host of the Jeff Cameron Show here on those Warchant podcast channel that all of you should be subscribing to. Of course, of all that is true. And it's time again for another edition of our Top 40, the original Top 40 countdown that we do this off season. Always fun. And once again, before I move forward, I want to give you the parameters for which we voted. All 7 of us here at Warchant.com voting here on staff for this Top 40 countdown. It's based on the potential impact for this season, contributions for the 2022 season. It's not about long-term. It's not about their NFL prospects or anything like that. It's about this year and the importance and impact that they'll have on the 2022 season. Before we discuss those numbers, like and subscribe to Warchant TV. That way you get the latest edition of the countdown and all the other content that we provide on a regular basis here on Warchant TV. So before we move forward, let's go ahead and post from which we came. That is 21 through 30. And that is, as you see on the screen in front of you, the list of names, some impact players that all of us have already discussed. You can find that previous episode right here on Warchant TV as well. And now we'll move forward as we get set for 16 through 20. You want to look at 16 through 20, and obviously very excited to do so. We'll start. This is offensive line laden, guys. This group here, it's awfully good. Kayden Lyles starts at number 20. And it's kind of, I think with Kayden Lyles, we're all wondering, is he going to start at center? What's going to happen? You look at Maurice Smith, he came in at 28. Really, the group here, all of us who voted, are trying to figure out and project who the starter is going to be. And I think a lot of us lean heavily towards that being Kayden Lyles. I'd say everybody except for maybe Gene, you don't think so. Maybe, I don't know. Let's start with you. Your thought on where Kayden Lyles sits here at number 20.
Oh, I was excited than anybody. When you ever get a Wisconsin transfer in here, especially a guy that looks like him, the first time he walked off the bus, I was like, holy moly, this doesn't look like an FSU offensive lineman. He looks like he was carved out of the Big Ten. Michigan, Wisconsin, those kind of guys. But, man, I can't completely discount the fact that I know we're not supposed to talk about depth charts, but he really didn't seem like he was doing a whole lot with the first team there in the spring. So I think that put a little bit of weight on that. And the other thing, I think we're too easy. And I had Maurice Smith higher than Kayden Lyles, so you know where my mind is right now on that was the reasoning. And I think we're too quick to just look at last season and say, well, he was as bad, he was horrible, which he was, but he had a back problem, man. You're trying to guard, especially guys who are bigger than you, and your back is struggling. I don't think that's fair. Go look at his PFF grades. They got a lot worse last season. I don't think he got worse as an offensive lineman. I think he was struggling physically last year. So I think the experience, I just think he's going to end up being the starter. We'll see. And I do think Kayden Lyles will contribute. So I still had him on there. Maybe he can play some guard, even if he's your backup center. I mean, that's solid to me. But I think this is more about Maurice Smith holding on to that starting job other than anything bad about Kayden Lyles.
Yeah, really quick, Ira and Tom, if you want to add here, I think all of us look at this and say, we would like to see, to Gene's point, and this is nothing against Maurice Smith, but they got to get bigger there. And if he's not bigger, you'd like to see Kayden Lyles win this spot just because he is a massive human being.
Yeah, one thing I would add real quick is I did hear, talking to somebody around the team recently, that Maurice is around 290 now. Apparently he's put on some really good weight this offseason. So they're excited about that. He's healthy. So I do think this competition is going to be a really good competition. I wish I had known that when I put Maurice down like in my low 30s, because I just saw him in the spring and thought, I don't know what's going to happen over these next 4 or 5 months, but I think they're going to end up with Kayden Lyles. But at this point, Maurice has really rallied. I think he's put on some good weight and is healthy. So that's a good sign for him. It wouldn't shock me if Kayden Lyles won a guard job. I mean, I think he's going to be a vital part of this offensive line, either at center or guard. He's an experienced, grown-ass man that's, 23 years old probably. And I think he'll be a force whether or not he's in the starting lineup at center or not.
Yeah, for me, with the limited time that I saw Kayden Lyles in spring, there were times where he was an uprooter. You do the individual drills and you see those in the course of practice, and it's when it's individual matchups. So left tackle goes against a right defensive end and so forth down the line. Kayden Lyles was throwing D tackles into guards that are lined up next to him and not involved in the play. And I got pissed off at Kayden. I'm like, dude, stop doing that. He just has the strength to uproot you. in a way that a lot of players on this offensive line do not. Now, I know that agility is a big part of the conversation in Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell's scheme. You got to get from point to point. I don't know that Kayden Lyles is going to be that type of player that you can pull either direction. So you kind of have to concede some things if you're going to start him. But if you're trying to win a third and 1 or a 4th and goal, I think you might want Kayden Lyles out there. So that's why I have him a little bit higher on my list.
Yeah, he's a big man, and I came away from spring wondering about how he would contribute, how much he would contribute, would he be the starter? This is all part of why we're so pumped up to get into fall practice, because another part of why Kayden Lyles might be a mystery is we have to be fair about this. He's learning an entirely new system. He was coming back from an injury, so there's a spring. You don't have to learn it all. You just got to get acclimated and figure some things out. So that competition that Ira was referencing, Gene, you were referencing, and Tom, this is exciting for us as Florida State fans because Florida State's lacked real competition on the offensive line for some time, and this is where obviously you get stronger. Let's move on to the next player at number 19. That's Pokey Wilson, Ontario Wilson. I had him very high along with Aslan and Corey. We have him in the top 15. Tom, you have him down low along with Gene at 26. And here's why I had him high, because the expectation for him is no longer to be that of a 1. He can be a 3, and if he's your 3, he's going to be a good 3. So I think he could be very productive. I'm excited that he seems more slated to be in the role that he should be in. He's nobody's 1, but he could be a very productive 3. I'll start with you, Tom. You had him at 26.
I did. Yeah, part of that was because I think a guy like Ja'Kai Douglas might have more impact, even though he's not your 3 or your 4. And I know you guys talked about this on the previous video that I wasn't on the panel. You're going to get your money's worth, I think, in explosive plays with somebody like Ja'Kai Douglas. I think Pokey Wilson might be involved more in some of the more anonymous type plays in a game, where maybe it's 6 targets, 4 catches for 32, and maybe one of those is a big moment where you extend the drive. But I think when you're going down the depth chart line from Micah Pittman onto maybe a healthy Winston Wright, maybe not, McLean, Johnny Wilson, I just have a hard time seeing where Pokey Wilson is going to make impact plays like he did, for example, against Boston College. I know that's the photo that we have up on the graphic of him getting and stretching out to the goal line. I just don't know where in this offense he's going to be featured at that level. I think there are some more explosive playmakers and more consistent playmakers at receiver in front of him. Doesn't mean he doesn't belong in the top 40. I had him in the top 40. I just don't know that he belongs near the top of the list. That's all.
Yeah, I'm kind of with.
Go ahead, Gene. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I was kind of with Tom on that. To me, and I had Johnny Wilson. I know we talked about that before, really high. So I think him and Micah Pittman I think they're going to carry the day. And I think for that third spot, it's going to be between Ja'Kai, Pokey Wilson, McLean, Portier, Keyshawn Helton in there. I just think a lot of those guys are going to be in and out and be that third guy. I really think 2 guys are going to carry the day. So that's one of the reasons. Nothing against Pokey. To your point, Jeff, interesting, in the spring, I talked to somebody very inside the program, let's say, and he was like, Ontario Wilson maybe is a number 1, not a good fit, is a perfect number 3 in an offense. So from that perspective, you're right, 100%. That's what FSU's thinking, that he's a complimentary guy. He's your Scottie Pippen out there to the other 2 guys are Michael Jordan. So that could be really helpful. But I do think some of those other guys are on the rise. You're going to maybe take a little bit of that playing time away from Pokey.
He's got a lot of experience, Ira, that can't be underappreciated as well.
Yeah, and speaking of Jordan, the best thing I think I've ever seen from Pokey Wilson was doing the Air Jordan celebration when he scored against North Carolina, which was big time. I really appreciated that. But no, I think he might surprise us a little bit this year. I actually do. I think, Jeff, I would side with you. I think, the fact his experience and the fact that the passing game overall might be better. So, a lot of times those receivers didn't look great, but maybe if the offense operates better, his experience will shine.
I'm going to stay with you, Ira. Well, first, let's go ahead and present the next guy. I'm going to come back to you, Ira, I should say. Darius Washington comes in at number 18 on our list. It's the biggest disparity in this range. Our own Austin Cox had him as high as number 10. Austin's not here to defend himself, so I'll say that's insane, Austin. Ira, you were low at 33, so I'll start with you. Why 33? And let's get into this discussion, because that is a wide range for Darius Washington.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised where I ended up with him, and I didn't go into it expecting to have him that low because he has started for most of the last 2 years, and there's a chance he'll start this season. I just, looking at the lineup and looking at the depth chart and the pieces that they've added, and honestly, in all transparency, they've added another offensive lineman since we did this, Justin Turnentine. from South Carolina has transferred in, and he's another guy who will be competing for playing time on that offensive line. So I just think that, looking at the spring, it seemed like they were trying to cross-train Darius a lot at guard. I didn't love what we saw in the initial returns from that in the spring. So I'm not real bullish on him at guard right now. And then, they've upgraded a lot of talent at tackle. So I don't know. He may end up being – I thought he'd be maybe one of the starters, if not the sixth guy. With all they've brought in now, I think there's a chance he might be like the eighth guy on this offensive line. So that's kind of why I dropped him down.
It speaks to competition, Gene. I know you had him right there between all of us on the panel with like as low as 33, as high as top 10 for Austin. And then we have some mix in there with Corey and Aslan, but you have him at 16. I think a lot of us just have question marks about all these offensive linemen and how they get shuffled.
Yeah, that's why we got 3 in this range here. We really know how it's going to. You know what this is, guys? This is a great thing to happen here because there's actually competition at offensive line. It's like not like there's 5 okay guys and there's a huge drop off. This is just telling us if there's an injury, they're not going to be completely screwed as they have been in the past in this case. But now to kind of, I guess, sit in a little bit for Austin, who had him high, I want to say, thing about Darius, I mean, he's one of the most experienced guy. He's got 20 career starts. That says something. A lot of these other guys we're talking about, Bless Harris, we're going to talk about here in a minute, some of these other guys, they have no experience in this system. So I think there's some weight on that. And again, looking at PFF, and I know it's not perfect, but he was the second highest on the team in terms of pass block. He was almost a 70 grade, which is pretty darn good on their scoring system. So you got to think, if anything, he's going to get better. So if he's a consistent pass blocker with 20 starts, man, I have a hard time. I mean, it'd be great, I think, if he doesn't win a starting job. That says, man, you brought in some guys who are better than him. But I still, at this point with that, I got to opt to him being a starter. So I think that's why he should be a little bit higher than maybe we have him on the consensus.
Yeah, I want to echo your sentiment. We can't really reiterate this enough. The fact that they have perhaps, and we'll see, some quality depth and real competition on the offensive line going into this fall has to be one of the most buoying aspects of the upcoming season. I mean, this is just not something that Florida State fans and these coaches have had the luxury to fall back on and watch. I mean, when guys have gone down the last 2-3 years, you've really felt sort of a rudderless feeling going into games, sort of this, well, we're going to have to play this guy, hold your breath. It would be nice to not have to turn to your fellow Nole once you get the news that so-and-so's not starting today and think, well, I mean, my God, I guess we can try to patchwork this thing together. It would be nice. Maybe not. Maybe we'll get the real competition here and everybody's game will be elevated. Tom, I'm going to let you go here in a second because the next guy that I want to talk about is Bless Harris. And I came away, I told you on the Jeff Cameron show that I thought Bless Harris at the time he was being brought in was going to be solely a backup, that he was just a piece to maybe aid the depth chart. But I came away very impressed with Bless Harris in the spring, and I kind of projected he's going to be a starter. So does Aslan. He has him at number 11. Everybody else kind of 17 to 24. I guess we just got to figure out, depending on how high or low you have him, it's based, again, on really something we've already said here today, and that is, do you project him as a starter? I'll start with you, Tom.
Yeah, as of spring, yes, but there are now new people in the equation that are on campus for FSU this fall camp, so I don't know how things are going to shuffle out to make the best 5, but I thought Bless Harris was the best right tackle that performed in spring. Derrick McLendon, who is also on this list, and he's going to round out at number 16, was somebody who started really fast in spring camp. Like, he was explosive. He was present most every day in terms of the first week or two. Even when pads came on, it still continued. Then Bless Harris slotted in some important reps against McLendon at right tackle, and he impressed. McLendon and others have said, too, that Bless Harris, when they go one-on-one against him in individual drills, he might be the best tackle on the team. I think that's going a little bit too far. I don't have him above Robert Scott. In fact, I have Bless Harris right at 17 on my personal list. But I think this is somebody who is more than a steadying force. I think this is somebody who's probably going to end up in the top 5. But I do hold my breath, and I will wait and see what everybody else, the other transfers, look like when we come into fall camp. But right now, Bless Harris is the best right tackle on the team for me.
Anybody want to add anything to Bless Harris before we move on to Derrick McLendon, or are we good with that? Looking like we're good at that.
We're good. I think we're good.
Well, listen, when you have so many offensive linemen bunched up like this, and the consensus is basically they're all competing for a starting job, you're going to have some carryover there. Derrick McLendon comes in at number 16. I echo Tom's sentiment there. I think that's a guy that started really, really fast. I expect good things from him. I think he has a chance. I know we can talk about this as a group here. If he has a big year, we could look back at this and say this is a guy that, maybe needed to crack the top 10 of our top 40 list. Gene, I can start with you. Your thoughts on Derrick McLendon?
I think the one thing we know 100% is Derrick McLendon has to be a contributor. There just isn't depth there. I don't know. He may not be the starter. It might end up being some combination of Briggs and Verse, and maybe he's that third guy that comes in and out. But I mean, other than him and Warner, I don't know really who's left on that depth chart. And you're not going to play the guys all the snaps. So I mean, he's going to contribute. I like what I saw this spring. I mean, he flashed. It looks like he's making that progress. So I think he's going to be a viable contributor. I'll say one thing: if Austin's right and he has him at number 9, if we do, and we did this last year, if we do a postseason top 40. And McLendon's in the top 10, woohoo! That we're going to be singing about that defense. If we have a defensive end not named Verse in the top 10 postseason, that's a great sign for Adam Fuller.
Gene, I should say, Ira, anything to add to what Gene had to say there? Derrick McLendon. You know what? For as much as we talked together down on the field, all of us did as a staff going to those spring practices, I never really got your thoughts on Derrick McLendon.
Yeah, going into the spring, I wasn't sure what to think. To me, it just feels like if you're going to be a high-quality pass rusher, high-quality defensive end, you should see some real strong signs of that earlier in their career. And not everybody's going to be Brian Burns with 9.5 sacks as a freshman, but you'd like to see a little bit more. And so I was kind of wondering if it was ever going to happen with Derrick, but I thought he did look like that guy in the spring that we've seen flashes of occasionally. And one of the things that John Papuchas talked to us about, I think it was at one of the media functions, maybe even not at practice, but he said, one of the things about Derrick is he's so much stronger now. He's so much more, when he's a younger guy, he didn't have as much strength. So when offensive tackles would push him around or he's trying to bend around the end, a lot of times he would lose his positioning or lose his, inertia because he just didn't have that overall body strength and core strength. Now he has it and he's playing at a much different level. And I think we're seeing that in the spring. So, yeah, I think it's still going to be Briggs and Verse starting, but I think McLendon, he may end up being their top pass rusher, certainly along with Verse.
Well, there's some versatility there. They're not going to have a dominant player like they had a year ago in Jermaine Johnson, who changed the game week in and week out and that opposing offenses had to game plan for. But they may have enough in the way of guys who are good against the run with enough pass rushing skills. And you can slide Briggs, for example, inside on certain situations where you can have kind of the mix and match group here. And Derrick McLendon is part of that. And when you're trying to grade guys that may be good enough, maybe at times capable of owning a series, but not really dominating a game, it's hard to know where to put those guys because they're all going to play. They're going to play a lot, and you're going to need them to be good, but none of them really project to be dominant players this year, we don't think. But Derrick McLendon is certainly going to get a lot of time there. I want to say before we wrap up here that coming up next, you got 11 through 15 for our next top 40 video, and you want to make sure that you're liking, subscribing, of course, to Warchant TV so that you get notifications when these things pop up, and you can watch all these videos and kind of weigh in. Give us your thoughts on the boards. Go to warchant.com to do so. Tell us what you think about our rankings. I'm sure many already have. For Gene, for Ira, for Tom, I'm Jeff. Thanks so much to all of you for watching and listening and reading everything that we produce on Warchant TV, warchant.com.